Okay, so we're continuing Masechah Shabbos. We're on Daf Ches Amud Beis, Het Amud Beit. We're about 19 lines up from the bottom of the page, and it starts off Amar Rav Yehuda. So the last time we saw that if a person would cause a transfer in the Reshut Rabim, but it was something that itself was a domain, right? Itself, like a big barrel that we talked about, that had the dimensions of a Reshut Yachid inside, of a 4 by 4 tefach by a 10 tefach high area. And if it had that inside, and the person threw that, and he made it go 4 amot in the Reshut Rabim, he would be patur. Why? Because in the end of the day, he transferred a domain and not a hefetz, not an article, not something that is transferable. And we learned the halacha and the malacha of hotza'ah from the Mishkan, where they transferred articles. So as such, he would be patur. So now we're going to bring another case. Amar Yehuda, Hai zirza dekone, Rama v'zakfe, Rama v'zakfe. Loy mechayev ad de'akar le. Okay, so here's the story. The guy has a bundle of reeds. Okay, so imagine a bunch of sticks. Okay, now he doesn't pick them up and go with them. Otherwise, he'd be chayav right away for hotzah, for transferring, for moving it for amod in the Reshut Rabim. What he does instead is he stands up the pile of sticks, this pile of reeds, and then he lets it fall. Okay, and then he does it again. He piles it up, he stands it up, and he lets it fall. Now you can imagine, you let it fall in one direction, it's going to travel more and more in that direction. However, lo mechayev ad akarle, not going to be a hayav for this movement until he picks it up with both ends. Because think about it for a moment. When I pick it up, right? So pick something up you have in front of you and let it drop to the side. You'll see that the bottom of it remains stationary and in place. So yeah, I picked it up, but I never actually moved the entire item in one shot. Therefore, lo mechayev. It's not going to be hayav. But this is very different, Tosfot points out, to the case where a person drags the item. When a person drags the item, yes, one part of the item always remains on the floor, but it's not on the same part of the floor. It keeps moving. I'm effectively moving the entire item, even though part of the item is on the floor. Here, this case is that every move, the part on the floor remains on that part. It's picked up, so it's there on that part, and then it falls to the side, but that bottom remains in the same spot. So therefore, he never did a true akira, a true uprooting of the article, and therefore he'll be lo mechayev. So that's the first case. Now, there is a Tosefta, and we saw the Tosefta on Daf Vav, and it said as follows: Amar Mai, Adam Omen al ha iskupa. Person is standing on the iskupa. This is a threshold. Here, we're speaking about the threshold of a house. So the door, the area in front of the door of the house. Okay? Now, person is standing in this threshold of the iskupa. No tell me Baal Habayit. He can take from the Baal Habayit. The Baal Habayit is inside the house. He's in Rosh Hashanah. V'noten lo, and he can give it to him. So from wherever he's standing, this threshold, he can put it in the Rosh Hashanah and he can take from the Rosh Hashanah. But not only that, notel me'ani. He can take from the ani. V'noten lo, and he can give it to him. The ani, in the case of the Mishnah, was standing in the Reshut Rabim. He doesn't have a house. He's standing outside asking for bread. So here, the Tosefta, this Braita says that a person standing on this iskupa, on this threshold, can place and take from a Reshut Yachid, and he can place and take from a Reshut Rabim. So now, the Gemara wants to identify what place allows you to place and take from a Reshut Rabim, and to place and take from a Reshut Yachid. That is now the Gemara's query. So, ha iskupa mai. What is this threshold? What is its legal status, so to speak? Ilema iskupa Reshut Rabim. If you say the threshold, which is in the Reshut Rabim, is part of the Reshut Rabim, how can that be? No, tell me Baal Habayit. Then how could the Tosefta say he can take from the Balabait? The Balabait is in the Rishut Yachid. How can he take from there if he's in the Rishut Rabim? Ela iskupat Rosh Yachid must be the iskupa has the dimensions of a Rosh Yachid. But one second, it says no tel mehani. You can take from the poor person who's in the Rishut Rabim. Hakama al Rishut Rabim Rosh Yachid. You cannot affect the transfer from Rishut Rabim to Yachid. That's asur. So how can you say that from this iskupa? Ela, it must be the iskupa is a karmelit. The iskupa is the threshold. This area in front of the door is a rabbinic public domain, and it's not a real, true public domain. Igmar says, "Sof sof isura miha ita." No tell, no again. No tell me, no tell are you allowed to take and give place and take from there in the first instance? Sof sof isura miha ita. In the end of the day, it's rabbinically forbidden. So that cannot be the case. So the Sefta won't say a case which is rabbinically forbidden. It'll give you a case that is biblically permitted and rabbinically permitted. So must be. What is this iskupa? Ela iskupa, this threshold that we're dealing with, this area in front of the door, is makom patur ba'amahu. It really is a makom patur. Makom patur, on a biblical level, is anything that's not Rishut Yachid, is not Rishut Rabim. So we'll define Rishut Yachid again, is an area of at least 4 by 4 tefachim, which is about 16 by 16 inches, which is about 40, and it has to have 40 inches high walls. So 4 by 4 tefach by 10 tefachim high. That becomes a Rishut Yachid. Rishut Rabim is a place that has open wall streets, 16 amot wide, doesn't have a roof. It's traffic open on both sides. It's straight. Perhaps 600,000 people have to walk there. That's all Rishut Rabim. Anything in between, on a biblical level, is a Makom Patur. However, the Chamim were worried, and some people get confused between what looks like Rishut Rabim, which is not Rishut Rabim. Therefore, they made everything a Carmelit. So Makom Patur remains only in a place that is less than 4 by 4, okay, and has walls between 3 and 9. It's elevated off the ground 3, or has walls between 3, above 3 and less than 9. That becomes a makom patur, and that is this case because makom patur, you can affect it. That's what it's called, exempt place. You can affect the transfer from the makom patur to Rishut Yachid, from Rishut Yachid to makom patur. From Makom Patur Rabim to Makom Patur. So that you could do. And Kigoin, the late Arba. And it's a place that has less than 4 by 4 tvachim, and it fits, and it's not within 3 tvachim of the ground, and it fits the category of a Makom Patur. And that's why the Tosefta said you can give and take from the Rishut Yachid, you can give and take from the Rishut Rabim. V'chi otar of dimi omer Rabbi Yochanan, v'alkoim she'ein goy arba al arba tvachim. Place that has 4 by 4 tvachim and is not within 3 tvachim on the ground. You can use it. Anyone can use it. People can use it. People can use it. It's makom patur. However, but it's important that they do not exchange. Meaning, you should not use the makom patur to take something from Rishut Yachid to the Rishut Rabim. You're not allowed to take some Rishut Rabim, that's for sure. Now, through Makom Patur, biblically, it's Patur. And even halachically, like even rabbinically, it's allowed to take from Rishut Yachid to Makom Patur. However, the Chum didn't want you to take from the Rishut Yachid, put it in Makom Patur, which is allowed, from Makom Patur to Rishut Rabim, which is also allowed, but to Muslim Rishut Yachid to Rishut Rabim via the Makom Patur, this they did not want you to do. Amar Mar, Uvavad Shel Yitom Balabayit Benotin Lahani. However, if they did do it, Sheloshtan Piturin, they're all going to be potter. But we know Hilchos Shabbos potter means potter avo aser. We don't want them to do it because it's, in the end of the day, it'd be patur. But in the Maaseh, Chachamim didn't want you to do it because they didn't want you to get confused and think you can take something from Shidachin to put in the Rishut Harabim. So we're just going to quickly review some of the halachot that come out of this sugya. So here, okay, makom patur mutar lehotzi v'lachnis lehoshit v'lezorek yemenu Rishut Yachid Rishut Rabim umehem l'tocho. You can take something from Rishut Rabim to makom patur, makom patur Rishut Rabim, Rishut Yachid to makom patur Rishut Yachid. You can go in both directions between Rishut Yachid and Rishut Rabim to makom patur. Lo ya'amod adam al makom patur ve'yikach hefes miyad mi she'omed b'Rishut Rabim ve'yitenenu l'mi she'omed b'Rishut Yachid o lehefech. But you're not allowed to take something from Rishut Yachid and give it to someone Rishut Rabim, or take something from Rishut Rabim, or give it to someone in Rishut Yachid. Oy likach mikarka, or take it from the ground, even if there's no other people involved. Or likach mikarka Rishut Yachid, v'litain lekarka Rishut Rabim, and to put it in Rishut Rabim via the makom patur. V'imasa came, but if he did it, patur. Again, it's a gzeirah. We don't want someone to be mekel and take Rishut Yachid Rishut Rabim. But often that's also the oraita, and therefore they made this gzeirah. There is a question in halakha. This not using the makom patur, this gzeira, not using the makom patur to effect the transfer between shlichut and shabim, is it also between shlichut yachid and a carmelit? On one side I have a shlichut yachid, then I have a makom patur, then I have a carmelit. Can I effectively transfer via a makom patur from shlichut yachid to a carmelit, from shabim to a carmelit? It's the rabbanon domain. So says over here, v'lahachlif. Okay, derech makom patur b'rshut rabbanan yesh osrim, yesh matir. There are some who are oser and some who are matir. What is the svara for both? Number one, the one who say asur, they say, listen, Chachamim didn't want you to effect a transfer from anything that's forbidden to do, that looks forbidden. So therefore, we know it's forbidden to take Mishul Rabim to Karmelit or Shdechid to Karmelit. So therefore, you cannot use a makom patur. The others, including Shulchan Aruch, they say, hold on. And now you're making gzeira on top of a gzeira. Number one, the Karmelit is a gzeira. There's no Issa Rabbanan. There's no Issa Minatorah. There's no Issa Torah. There's no Issa Doraita. It's the Rabbanan. And this not using a makom patur to affect the transfer between one domain and another domain is also Issa Rabbanan. So now you're making two Isuri Rabbanan, gzeira on gzeira. This we're not going to hold up. And therefore, one would be mutar, one will be permitted to take from a Shut Yachid via makom patur to bring it to a Carmelit according to the Shulchan Aruch. Okay? That is halachot in this sugya. The sugya is not yet over. And we'll have two more halachot to come. Let's take a look at the next piece. Now that we understand about a makom patur, and a makom patur, if you actually transfer something via a makom patur, you will be patur. That's what it's patur for. It's an exempt area. Okay? So, lema teyeve teyufta de Rava. Let's say this is a refutation of Rava's statement. What was Rava's statement? Rava, an interesting case. המעביר חפץ מתחילת 44 ברשות רבים. אף על פי שהעבירו, on top of now tet amud aleph, אף על פי שהעבירו דרך עליו, חייב. Okay, this is an Ober Chacham. This is a guy who thinks he's super smart. So he said, listen, I know in Rishut Rabim that the halacha of Rishut Rabim is only 10 tfachim high, only 40 inches high. Anything above that is considered a makom patur. So the guy goes into the Rishut Rabim, and he picks up a ball, and he puts the ball over his head, and now he's carrying it from one spot to another spot, 4 amot away, the whole time over his head. So he thinks he's patur. Why? Because above 10 tfachim is makom patur. Above his head, definitely more than 40 inches. So he thinks he's patur. Says Rava, no, he's hayab. Why? I went through makom patur. So says the Gemara as follows: Hatam lo nach, haha nach. These two cases cannot be comparable because, at the end of the day, look at these two cases. When the guy transferred something via the makom patur, right? He took something from the balabayit, brought it to makom patur. From the makom patur, he took it to the ani. It actually stopped and rested in the makom patur. So the makom patur canceled the akira and the anaha. There was no anaha in a forbidden place. It was picked up on Rishut Yachid and dropped off the makom patur, which is permissible. And it went from makom patur to a Rishut Rabim, which is permissible. Therefore, it was patur. But in our case over here, the guy picked it up in the Rishut Rabim, right? He then walked with it above his head. But at no point is it resting in the makom patur. He's holding it. It cannot be considered to rest unless his body and his hand are in the same place. So as such, it never rested in the makom patur. And then he goes and he rests it where? In the Rishut Rabim. So the akira and the anaha are connected, and they both happen Rishut Rabim 4 amot away. And as such, he would be hayab. That is the way Rava explains this. Now, l'halacha, there's a machoket poskim does that item actually have to rest in the Makom Patur? The item itself has to come to a stop and rest in the Makom Patur? Or is it enough that the guy is standing there and holding it? He's not moving. He's standing there. Or he's sitting there. Make a difference. The item is stationary in his hand, and he is stationary on the Makom Patur. Is that enough to be considered nach, that it's resting there, and now he be patur, or not? So Rashi and the Rambam both say, yeah, the guy is standing there. Okay, the guy is standing there, stationary, and the item is in his hand, stationary. So then it's considered that it rests in Makom Patur. The guy will be patur. The Ravad, on the other hand, and others say that no, the item itself has to become stationary in there. So let's take a look at this in the halacha. Okay. Yes, I am shekol ha'omer kam b'malkum patur, hu afilu im loy nachas hefetz b'malkum patur. Ela kibet shu ba'atzma oimer genach b'malkum patur, and he came miyad shegia hefetz negdoi, nasa kamo sheniach sham me'at. This is the Rambam, this is Rashi. Yesh amrim shalei never calls that, el dafka im noch me'at b'malkum patur. Aber loy nach, which is Rav Mechayev, which is Rabbanon also. It didn't actually, the item itself did not rest there. According to the Ravan, he would be Hayav. He's understanding it, that it has to be itself resting there. So, המעבר חפץ, מתחילת ארבעה לסוף ארבעה, פשוט רבים. אף מי שהעבירו למעלה מראשו, so this is the case of the Gemara, these guys putting it over his head. היינו למעלה מעשרה טפחים, והוא מקום פטור. However, it'll be Hayav, because according to everybody, there is no rest over there. You're not going to be considered a rest if your body is in one place and your hand is somewhere else. Even though your hand is stationary, that is not considered that it is resting there. It has to be your body and your hand in the same domain, and you're stationary, then it could be considered according to Rashi and the Rambam. No one will hold that is, so therefore a person over there would be Hayat. Okay, now we come into our next topic in the Gemara. And this is a topic that requires some Eruvin knowledge, which we'll give whatever we need to give. And if you have the Gemara in front of you, whichever Gemara you have in front of you, they have diagrams in there. Because and if you're using the Art Scroll, the Mesivta, Steinzeltz, or any Gemara will have a diagrams just to make it easier on the eyes. And I'll point out, if you're using the Art Scroll, I'll point out which diagrams we're using. So here we're going back to a statement in the Tosefta. The statement in the Tosefta brought down Ahirim Omri. We already know the Ahirim is Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Meir said, "Iskupa meshameshet shte rushiot." A threshold can function as two different domains. One threshold can be two different rushiot. Bizman shehapeta patuach. When the door is open, kilifnim, it's considered as it is inside. Petach na'u, but when the door is closed, kilachut, it's like a shut rabim, it's considered outside. Okay, so now, what case is it when it's open? First of all, which iskupa is this? The Gemara, Rashi says, is understanding this case to be a threshold of a mavoi. Okay, a mavoi is a alleyway, a closed off alleyway. Okay, so in the times of the Talmud, there were houses that opened up into chatzers. Chatzers opened up into mavlis, into alleyways. The alleyway was a satum mavi satum, which means it was closed off on three sides. According to Rashi, that's already reshut yachid. Rambam says you need four walls. Fine. But everyone agrees that chametz that you can carry there if you do some sort of takana. What is this takana? Some sort of fix. What fix you can do? A lechi or a korah. A lechi is a side beam, side post, and a korah is a cross beam from the top. So if you put a lechi, you can now carry, because it's a recognition, it's affixed to the wall, it's just like a fourth wall there, like a fourth wall, or it recognizes that, it's a Rabbanan issue, right? Fine. So he has a lechi there. Now, interesting part of the lechi, doesn't matter how wide the lechi is, you're only allowed to carry, or Meir holds over here, you're only allowed to carry from the edge closest to the mavi of the lechi. So you can imagine, you have a big 4x4, okay? Lechi. whatever size the thing. Only the part that's the inside of the alleyway, from that edge, even though the wood is much longer, only from that edge you can carry. So here it's saying, let's say the alleyway had a door. The door opens, right? Now that threshold in front of that door is considered part of the inside. That, according to the Havamina of the Gemara, the door opens, the lechi is right by the door, and really you can carry only inside. And now the door opens, says Achenim, Meir says now that the area in front of the door becomes like the inside. So this is now the Gemara's question. Are you saying you're allowed to carry even if the threshold doesn't have an additional lechi? You'll need a second lechi, right? Even if you want to say that the door area, the threshold becomes part of the inside, you still need a lechi at the edge of it, so that from the inside you can carry. Because remember, the lechi only works from the inner edge inwards, not from the outer edge outwards, and from not against all that wood space, just the inner edge and inwards. That's when you can carry. So you need to have a second lechi. So how could Rabbi Meir say that open the door and you can carry in the threshold? Where's the second lechi? The chitin. Now, don't tell me. And if you want to say the threshold doesn't have a 4x4, so it's not a significant area. So therefore, one lechi is enough, right? Because it doesn't really need a second lechi because it's not really a big area. It's not really a significant area. By the entranceway, by the threshold, you still need a second lechi. Okay? So we don't have a case right now where Rabbi Meir makes sense because the understanding the Rashi brings to the Gemara. He's talking about an alleyway that is closed off and it has a door and there's a lechi there. When the door opens, Rabbi Meir said you can carry in the threshold area. Says the Gemara, it's not possible because you need a second lechi in front of the threshold, so you can carry in that threshold area. So it can't be that case. So we're going to have two explanations, and they're not necessarily arguing with each other. There's two explanations of how to understand the statement of the Acherim, the statement of Rabbi Meir. Okay. So the first one is Amar Yehuda Amar Rav. Amar Yehuda said to Rav, Hacha be'iskupat mavoy askina. You're right. Your Havamina was right to say that it was a alleyway threshold. But this is the way you have to learn it. It's no lechi here. It's not a case of a lechi. Chetzio mikoreh vechetzio she'eno mikoreh. Ve'kurayo kalape panim. Okay. A little more about Hilchos Eruvin. When you put a korah, a crossbeam, the halacha is slightly different. By a lechi, it's from the inner edge inwards. On a korah, the halacha is from the outer edge. So the whole outer edge, you're allowed to carry in that area where the korah is. Right? It's recognizable. The wall, however it works. Okay, that's just the fact. Okay, so here's what. The guy put the korah over the door. It's sticking out a little bit outside of the door. Okay, so he opens the door. The area under the korah now gets to be part of the mavli. And now it becomes part of the inside. When he closes the door, he doesn't have anything. The korah is there, but the korah is on the wrong side. You need it at the end of the threshold area. The beginning of the threshold area, so you can walk there. Right now, you're right in front of the door, so that korah doesn't do anything for you. So that's what he explains. Petach patuach kilifnim. Everything underneath the korah is considered inside when the door is open. Petach nu'al kilachutz. But if the door is closed, then you have the korah in the wrong place, and it doesn't do anything. So therefore, the whole area is considered a reshut rabim. This is in the article on 982. You can see it in note 11, note 12, the diagram. Okay. Now, Rav Ashi Omar, Rav Ashi says, I'll explain to you slightly different. Not to do with an iskupa of a mavui, but rather an iskupa of a house. Rav Ashi Omar, lo'ila biskupat bayit askinon. We're dealing with a threshold of a house. But the case is, in this case, he's putting up two cross beams. Okay? One cross beam is within the house, and one cross beam is outside, and the door is in between. Okay? So, and none of the korot, none of the beams have four tfachim. But there's no three tfachim in between. So you can use the principle of lavut to connect them. When the door is open, so the two cross beams that are both less than four, but within three tfachim, they can now combine and they become four tfachim. Now, when you have something with four tfachim as a roof, we have a principle, it's considered coming down and closing off the area. So that whole area becomes like the inside. It's all considered enclosed because it has this roofed area, right? Petach na'ul kilachutz. But when the door closes, it separates the two cross beams. And as such, and luckily separates the two cross beams, and as such, it doesn't come together. And now you don't have a four tefach beam. And as such, you cannot have P whatever it doesn't have it going down and enclosing the area. And as such, now it becomes like the beam, and you're not allowed to carry there. Okay? So just to explain it outside, we had the Meir, who had a statement, who said that the area, the threshold in front of the iskupa, sometimes is Reshut Chid, sometimes Reshut Rabim. What is the case? Couldn't be a case of a regular lechi, because you definitely need a second lechi outside the threshold area, because you only can carry with inside. So what is this case? Yehuda said the case is, you're right, it's a mavi. It is an alleyway. But the alleyway is fixed with a korah, with a beam, and there's a door there. So when the door opens, everything under the beam becomes part of and the beam is over the door. So everything becomes inside and considered k'lefnim, and it's the yachid. When the door closes, the beam is in front of the door. It's not in front of the beginning of the threshold, and therefore it's considered shut beam. According to Rav Ashi, the case is about a iskupa of a house, and there's a cross beam, two cross beams, and there's a door in between. So when you open the door, the two cross beams, which are within three tefachim of each other, become one big cross beam, and now it's considered like a roof. And P tikre yored v'sotem, it goes down and it closes off the area, and therefore it's considered like within inside. But when you close the door, the two cross beams are no longer connected. They're no longer connected. And as such, you don't have a 4x4 area, a 4 tefach area of a roof, and you cannot go down and close it up. So therefore, it's considered kilahutz, like the Nishun Harabim. That is that case in a nutshell. Now to come to our last topic in this week's Gemara. If the iskupa, if the threshold is with 10 tvachim high walls and it has a 4x4 area, it's its own reshut yachid. Messiah, and you shouldn't carry in between the house and that iskupa. Messiah Rabbi Yitzchak bar Dimi. Yitzchak bar Dimi. Omer Hayar Rabbi Meir. Right, the Chaim is Rabbi Meir. So you find the place that has two rishiot, two private domains, two public domains, whatever it is. You're in a reshut yachid, and you have another a pillar there that has its own reshut yachid status. You're not allowed to use it. Why? Even though biblically you're allowed to. Why not? According to Meir, because if you do it in reshut yachid, you might do it in reshut rabim. Everyone says this is not in the house. Not talking about a house. We're talking in outside reshut yachid. Okay, big backyard, whatever it is that's enclosed. So you might come to confuse it for a real reshut rabim, and therefore, since I'm able to use another reshut yachid within the enclosed big outside area, I might get confused with the reshut rabim and might do it. So therefore, he says, don't do it even when it's in a private domain. So anyway, this is the Gemara for today. Next Shabbat, next Sunday, we're not going to have a what's it called, a Gemara shir, because it's going to be Shavuot on Shabbat, and we usually do the class on Shabbat. This is the second class. So the Gemara class will recontinue and the week after, the Sunday after Shavuot. So not the first Sunday, but the second day, Sunday after Shavuot. Shavuot Tov, and good preparations for Shavuot.